So moved.
Second.
A motion and second to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Agenda is approved as presented. Item 3, the consent agenda. Chair, I entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That passes. Any others, delegations? Item 5A, monthly information items. Information, no action needed. Any questions or observations? Seeing none, we move on to item 5B, donation acknowledgements.
Per board policy, the administration hereby reports to the Board of Education the receipt of $1,205 donation to the softball program from Harry and Mary Yoder. Mary passed away last month, and Harry had memorial contributions made to the Mary Yoder Athletic Fund, donating the money to the softball as their 2 daughters played softball. The administration also reports the receipt of a $7,500 donation from Terry Herrick in the memory of Max B. Herrick Jr. to the wrestling program for Wrestling Max. We would also report the receipt of a $5,000 donation from Hunter's Pride Construction to the wrestling program for Wrestling Max. We're extremely grateful to these families and individuals for their generous donations.
Item 5C, construction management update.
Oh, good evening again. High school still underway, making a lot of good progress there, and that's what we'll talk about here. But rapidly approaching is the remainder of the project, starting next week, so June will get underway, as will the middle school. This summer we've worked out some details of the middle school roof, so we're looking at starting that work mid-summer and hoping to have that 100% complete. The roof should be 100% complete before school starts. So maybe working on some of the interior finishes, but we're still working through that from a logistics standpoint. So we're making a lot of good progress on all that. So photos. First set of photos is the exterior canopy. So these were actually taken yesterday and today, so these are pretty up to date. Metal stud framing ongoing. So the next thing after that would be wrapping all of that with plywood, and then we'll be able to measure for all that metal panel that gets cladded around that whole thing, and also the signage, because you have some signage on kind of that face down there. Also up in a lot of that rafters up there is where a lot of your lights are. You have a lot of linear lights up there, make kind of that whole thing glow, so it's gonna look pretty good at the end of the day. Next slide. So this would be the west side, so kind of the admin space. As you all may know, we had some structural issues on the west side that held us up, so we kind of split the west side from the east side of the administration renovation area. This is the west side, so we got all the structural fix in place, and we were able to start metal stud framing and rough in a few weeks ago. So making a lot of good progress here, getting ready to start hanging sheetrock and finishing in a lot of these spaces on the west side. So coming along quickly. Here's a couple of photos of the east side. You can see that's rocked out, finished out, and actually ready for paint. So we're getting the west side cut up to the east side. We should be here in a couple of weeks. So moving right along on the high school renovation. We're actually tracking a little bit ahead of schedule on that. So it's good. A lot of good progress. That's all I have for you. It's not a lot more.
Well, I just want to say I've heard lots of compliments about the new entry to the ECC.
ECC. Oh,
Yes,
fantastic.
it just really looks great. It looks great.
We're actually using the exact same system on the high school.
Oh, cool.
So obviously very different look. This
Right.
is the high school, but the same system, the manufacturer called Drydesign. And this actual manufacturer, the middle panel is the exact same manufacturer, so it's the same type of system.
Good.
So it should look pretty good. Some similarities between the components. Synergies.
I'll also say that the McEwen kids are loving the new playground. They're so excited to be out there, and they love how soft it is.
I actually thank this one for that. I had nothing to do with that.
I'm glad they got to use it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, those playgrounds, they look really good. So, maybe go through them. Yeah. questions. I will have that middle school gym change order prepared for you all here next time. So you'll see that with all the backup on it. That's the structural change that's happening. So you'll all have backup. Anything else?
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Item 6A, assessment evaluation of district programs, informational items.
Well, we're fastly approaching the end of the year. 83% of our year is complete. Overall revenues are at 98% of budget, and expenditures are at 74% of budget, but that will jump up a lot in June because we pay our July and August salary and benefits in June on our books, and so that will catch up here shortly. Fund balances, fund balance percentage, 48% for funds 1 and 2. So we're still ahead of our goal of 20 to 25%. Year to date, our revenues are over expenditures by 5.5 million, mostly due to the bonds sale. Total cash and investments were at 25.3 million, with 8.5 million of that in bond proceeds. Any questions?
Thanks, Deb. At-risk program, Jason.
Yes, I'm fortunate enough to get to compile information from the building administrators on our at-risk program. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but just highlight a couple things that came across and some things that I've added since, we do these every 2 years. So one was just kind of the definition, so that we kind of are clear about what we're talking about when we say at-risk, because everybody has a little different idea of what that means. And I'll kind of focus that at-risk students comprise students whose education can be adversely affected due to deficits, loss of interest in school or learning, or outside factors that impair their education. Mr. Menching talks pretty much every month as we talk through our strategic plan on learning and a focus on learning. And so learning in general and all the conversations that we have encompass what we talk about with our at-risk students also. So what we're seeing in the last 2 years is deficits, or outside factors that impair their education. And through COVID, I'm starting to see that shift, and I think others are too. So you hear us talk a lot about Tier 1 instruction and what our teachers are doing for all of our students, which is very, very important. The at-risk side of that, like it's mentioned from other buildings, is kind of that what used to be called RTI or MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support, things that are put in place to help students that just regular, normal, good education, they're still not able to be successful, or we don't feel they're on track to be college and or career ready for that next level. So that's just kind of that mindset, but a big focus of what we do is on that Tier 1, because we really need to catch those, but we need to understand there is this population of at-risk students that we also need to address. So just to touch base on kind of the goals, is 1, to identify students who are not performing to their potential and assist those students with the skills and knowledge necessary to increase their self-esteem, pride, and academic excellence. To provide sufficient opportunities to at-risk students so that they may graduate college ready or career ready and on time. And to provide programs that include activities in the classroom, counseling, group and individual, and awareness and prevention efforts. So like that third bullet, some of those are just for at-risk, but many of those are for our Tier 1, is for everybody to try to catch that kid before they're at risk. So I won't read through everything that buildings put in there, which kind of is changing. It's fluent to what is happening all the time, but as we go through this, as I talk to some of the building principals and others through cabinet and everything else, I kind of want to go down just the overall strengths of the program, and then some ideas for growth. That's, in my opinion, what we need to look at these program evaluations is what can we do to get better. So overall strengths, we do have a variety of tiers and interventions to meet each student's need. So those MTSS is there. Annie and Christy do a lot of work with that, along with our building administrators. So we have those tiers. We have relationships that are mentioned in there with Bright Futures is a partnering organization that really definitely helps with our at-risk population in a variety of ways. So we have those tiers in place. They're always shifting. One of the goals you could see was identification, and that has come up as an area I think we can definitely grow, is to have consistent identification of students who are at risk. So again, I included the definition to go back on that of what, if I say at risk to every administrator, are we talking the same group of kids? And then how are we identifying those kids, and is that consistent district-wide? And I think we can continue to improve on that as we use the FastBridge data is our local data that we can use for some of the academic side, but there's a lot of factors and risk factors that come involved that are not necessarily academic side. So are we using those consistently to gather the data to make sure we're focusing on the correct kids for this? So that's something I think we can definitely get better on. Sharing the data on our needs and needs met. Bright Futures shares every month their needs and needs met to the Bright Futures Council, but I think that type of information that our social worker is working with, our counselors, nurses, what is some data that would be beneficial for us as administrative teams to look at, to how many kids are we talking about, that kind of stuff. So I see that as an area where we can grow. And then as part of policy, it mentions a formal 9th grade identification and plan. Obviously, towards the end of their high school career, or their school career in high school, it's very, very important to make sure we don't have to catch up those students that are academically behind and or McKinney-Vento, homeless. I mean, there's so many different at-risk things. So we need to have a good formal plan in 9th grade. So what I plan to do is just with our administration, working through a variety of administrators and our partners such as nurses, social worker, and others is to kind of put a program committee together to look at this again and reassess and work on those 3 areas. So that's kind of my plan going forward. So that information can then go right down into the tier 1 information that academically they're looking at. Are we answering some of those questions? If we have a student that we're looking at their academic data and they took FastBridge and they didn't test well, do we know whether their attendance has been terrible? Do we know whether they're getting their basic needs met? Maybe they slept in a stranger's house or slept in their car or whatever. Are we really truly looking at those factors to see that might be causing some of their academic issues too? So, yeah. Any questions?
Any questions for Jason? Appreciate the work on that. Item 6B, strategic plan update.
So just a precursor for next month, we have that FastBridge data, which is our year-long tracking of our academic performance in reading and math for K through 8 that we will present. We will have action plans associated with that data. So we did take statewide assessments in the spring, but as you know, we won't get that information probably until October. So it's crazy how they distribute that. It's hard to make instructional changes at that point. So we will have instructional change recommendations based on our internal data provided for you at the next board meeting. So we've really placed a focus on those data-driven decision-making processes. As you heard Jason talking about data as well. So, also on the financial side, that's part of our strategic plan too, is to make sure that we're financially sound. And just want to highlight that we are in a strong position financially to make some good recommendations on the salary schedule coming up later on the agenda. So that's something we've worked hard at for the last 3 or 4 years. With a lot of cuts and different things, and so we feel like we're in a strong position to make those recommendations.
Item 6C, safe return to school plan. Entertain a motion.
I move to continue with the current status of the safe return to school plan.
Second.
Motion and second, discussion, questions. This runs through,
So yes, the $3 million is gone.
okay, release it.
Which is one more, is it one more year?
Well, we can spend it for 2 more years, so, cause it just approved it, the last phase of it, so. I would say, we'll see what DESI recommends, we'll find out in probably in July at the conference if we can,
Spend it earlier if we did.
well, we can spend the money, we know how we're doing that, we have a plan for the money, it's, you have to have this plan in place associated with that, so, just, we'll see how that goes.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Approved. Item 6D, closing of Wildcat Academy. Chair, entertain a motion.
I move to close Wildcat Academy beginning with the 2022-23 school year.
Second.
Motion second, discussion.
So, just so everybody understands, I mean, from the data that Jason presented you, it talks about the number of kids that typically go through Wildcat Academy. It's, you know, roughly 20, at a time right now, though 20 to 25, those are not it's not a traditional class where they're sitting there all day in one classroom. It's kind of a come and go situation depending on work schedules, etc. And so that service will not go away. We are planning to move the actual service to the high school, that at-risk credit recovery piece to the high school. The building itself is just not, it's not economically feasible for us to keep that up. The roof needs to be replaced. There's been some flooding issues, which cause a lot of mold and other things, and so really the building has outstayed its welcome. So unless we want to invest a lot of money into it, and so we just feel like for efficiency purposes, we can still serve those students just in a different location. The one area that it would affect is students that are on long-term suspension. Those students would be sent home essentially to do that work virtually, whereas now they go to Wildcat Academy in some cases. Depends on the type of case, whether they are going to the academy or sent home now, but there is a small number of students that would be affected in that situation where they would just have an OSS instead of a long-term suspension school. Because the nature of the offense, we would not want them to return to the campus itself, so. That's,
The windows are in pretty bad repair. Just multiple things inside that have been kind of on our radar to try to get, but the cost keeps going up, and it's like, is that an investment that we need to put in there? Ceiling and just aesthetically inside needs some work.
We have to move the clothing store down.
sorry,
to the- Well, because of the mold
Yes,
there,
yeah,
that's why we ended
yeah,
up having to
yeah,
move it.
that's why we moved
Right.
Station 42.
Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Item 7A. Review 23 certified salary schedule. Chair, entertain a motion. No. Well,
You wanna hear the conversation first?
yes, we probably better.
So there's two proposed certified salary schedules. One of those schedules would increase the base by $1,750 to a $40,000 base salary schedule. The second option would be to increase the base by $750 to make the base $39,000, and then add an additional $100 each increment vertically throughout the schedule. So we took that proposal to Team Harrisonville, which is, discusses a lot of the salary and welfare issues that we have with typically veteran teachers. That group was in favor of the $39,000 with a $100 increase to each step. Just to put this in perspective, so our base salary is competitive, beyond competitive, quite frankly. We've done a good job through the levy. The levy, none of this would be possible without the levy, so I can't emphasize that enough. Where we struggle comparatively is on those vertical steps. So our vertical steps are $500 a piece, most places. There's some wonky spots in there that haven't I talked about, but for longevity, but typically they're $500 steps. You look at other schedules, and then they're all over the board, but we are the least competitive on that step piece of it. However, when you look at the $40,000 schedule, with the recent grant program that was approved in the state budget, where schools that don't have a base salary of $38,000 receive additional funding to get to $38,000, it just creates some more separation from those schools who choose to participate in that program. So it's really, I like to make recommendations to you. There's two tough choices here, and it's just a philosophical choice. You want to hit the higher end of the schedule, or do you want to hit the lower end of the schedule? That's what we're going down to. So I would typically say that we have a committee with Team Harrisonville, and they we like to hear what they recommend, and I would typically support their recommendation. It's just the one thing that meeting was a couple of months ago, and the $38,000 proposal by the state had not been adopted at that point. So that's why I even throw this on there as another option. But either way, they'll be happy.
We're not allowed to participate in that program
No,
because we're
that's-
already above
That's a good point.
that
So no,
38.
we're already above the $38,000 base. We get no benefit from that at all.
And then the increases is either cost,
Yes.
but isn't that covered by the levy?
The
These costs?
increase?
Mhm.
No. That's, so if your assessed valuation goes up, some of it will be covered by that, but basically it's a combination of multiple factors. Your increase in revenue from multiple sources, including levy, but also including that is just the operating costs have gone down through some attrition and other things that we're able to do, so.
I was thinking the levy was supposed to bring in about $1 million.
It did, and we put that on that first year, and we used a lot of that. And it continues to bring in additional revenue. But it's that same, it stays, unless your assessed valuation climbs up dramatically, your revenue stays pretty consistent with that number, so.
So is it not $1 million each year?
It is, but when we increased that $3,000 jump, it ate most of that up, so. Not all of it, because I'm pretty conservative on how I budget, so.
Well, I would make a motion to approve option number 2 for the 2022-2023 certified salary schedule with a step increase as presented.
I second.
Motion second. Any further discussion?
Hey, Paul?
Yeah.
Can you tell me what option 2 is?
Yes.
Please?
Option 2 is the $750 base. Doug, it increases the base salary to $39,000 and adds the $100 increments per step. I failed to mention also that we are also, both schedules ask for another step on the master's columns over to get to 30 years. 4 years ago when I came, I mentioned that my philosophy is I want our teachers that are in the master's column not to feel like they have to continue to go to school to get an administrative degree. Essentially, if you have a master's degree as a teacher, you should be able to continue your career at that. And so that will accomplish that goal from 4 years ago. This will be the end of that, but that's on both schedules. So does that answer your question, Doug?
Yes, sir, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
On that, I just wanna make sure I understand, so you're basically increasing the, what do you call it, the
vertical steps going down. Each one's gonna go by 100. Instead of, right now they go by 5, they'll be 6.
The one what you were just telling Doug though about the plus 30, masters plus 30.
It's master, just the master's column. If you look at the master's column, that
This
middle
one right here.
Yep, that
Okay.
one. Before it didn't go all the way to 30. Those over,
Gotcha.
those over, there's 3 of them did not go down to 30. So
Gotcha.
now we'll go down to 30.
Other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Next item, 7B, is substitute teacher pay schedule. Chair, entertain a motion.
Move to approve the 2022-23 substitute teacher pay schedule as presented.
I second that.
Motion second, discussion, questions?
How does this compare to districts around us?
Jason,
For
you wanna
some-
tackle that?
We'll be competitive now, so, we made the change a couple years ago, we increased it up to $100 a day. We were, prior to that, the lowest around, most every time that came up. Now we'll be towards the highest. As of right now, there's other boards meeting right now that are, making those decisions, so, but it is very comparative to the east side of the state. I was surprised, I was at a meeting recently where they were paying around the St. Louis area $80 a day, so, pretty good sized district, so I was kind of surprised with that, but, right around here will make us competitive with Ray-Beck, Pleasant Hill, and Lee Summit, and some of those others around, so we'll be right, pretty much the same.
Other questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Item 7C, other hourly pay schedule. Chair, entertain a motion.
Move to approve the 2022-23 other pay salary schedule as presented.
A second.
Motion second, any questions, discussion? Seeing none, all
Wait, I just have one. What is a homebound teacher?
So students who are typically ill, let's say they have a long-term illness, they're assigned to homebound. And so in order for them to count as being in attendance, they have to have 5 hours of instruction per week, so minimum. And so we assign a homebound instructor to go to their home and provide that 5 hours a week of instruction. It could be all at one time or 1 hour a day for 5 days. So.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Item 7D, coaching salary schedule.
So would this still be option 2? Okay. I move to approve option 2 for the 2022-23 coaching salary schedule as presented.
A second.
Motion second, any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 7E, clerical admin business office technology salary schedule. Chair, entertain a motion.
I move to approve the 2022-23 clerical admin and business office technology salary schedule as presented.
Second.
Motion second, discussion.
So there's a lot of columns on here associated with these employees. So this is a pretty significant jump. This is the area where we were the most behind when comparing it to surrounding districts, and yeah, it needed to be done. So it averages about an 11% increase for these positions over the schedule. So
Way past it.
yes, I would play past.
Now, does that include the paras?
It is not. That's the 9-month schedule.
Okay, that's the next one.
Any questions, comments? Hearing none, All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Item 7F, 9-month salary schedule.
I move to approve the 2022-23 9-month salary schedule as presented.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion, observation, comments.
So this schedule was a little more in line with surrounding districts. We did still increase it. It's about a 4.5% increase, I would say. It's the increase on the base plus the steps there again on the schedule. So again, it was a little more in line, but it gives them a nice raise as well. So.
Questions, further observations? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Item 8, business services, item 8A, resolution for signature change. Chair will entertain a motion.
Move to approve the banking resolution from Hawthorne Bank as presented.
Second.
Questions?
Just had to be adopted as a resolution, sorry. So. Roll call, Dave.
Hearing no comments or observations, call roll please.
Finley,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Doug Meyer,
Yes.
Doug Alexander,
Yes.
Cameron,
Yes.
Jenny,
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
Thank you.
Item 8B, real estate contract. Chair will entertain a motion.
Move.
I move to approve the contract for the sale of property located at 303 East Washington as presented.
Second.
Motion is second. Questions, discussion?
So this is the discussion that we had previously with negotiations. This is the formal contract. We will then take it to profit off land title after the sale.
Any other questions? Is it just voice? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Item 8C, maintenance custodial contract.
I move to award the contract for facility maintenance and custodial services to Avco Service Corporation for a period of 3 years, beginning July 1, 2022, and continuing through June 30, 2025. The 3-year contract amount is $3,754,412.
A second.
Motion is second.
So per the board's request, we issued an RFP for this service. We had 6 respondents. We tabulated the 3 lowest bids, interviewed those 3. 2 board members, Jason, Deb, and I sat on those interview processes, and then the matrix for the bid tabulation was presented with the recommendation.
Questions?
So what built-in safeguards do we have? Obviously, we went to bid because we weren't happy with the services that we were receiving, the price increases, the additional money they want for paying their employees raises, which took money away from our staff, and we're right back to them again. So what assurances do we have just because we dressed a pig, put some lipstick on it, that it's gonna change? Do we
Well,
have
first of
something
all, I
in
don't think
there?
that's why we went out to bid.
Well,
We did not go out to bid for those reasons.
I think we needed to go out there for those reasons. We had
Well,
brought them up
that's
for
true.
several months. They weren't, doing the contract stuff. Work orders were being left undone. So we're right back to them again. So is there something built into this contract that they will give us reporting on a monthly or quarterly basis as to where our money's being spent, what they're doing with it? Are they catching up with the work orders? Are we gonna go right back to the same thing if nobody's watching them, that the stuff isn't being done? Is there anything in this contract?
What specifically do you want in the contract?
I want them to come in and report to us
They do report.
what they're doing. They never reported to us. I never had
We don't
anybody
get
stand
the
up here and say,
reports.
we've got
We
300
don't get the
outstanding work
reports. We
orders.
don't get the reports.
We should.
No, we
How can
shouldn't.
we keep track of what they're
We're
doing
not
with our
supposed to
money?
keep track of it.
Yes, we are.
No, we
We're
aren't.
guardians of the
No, the
taxpayers' money.
administration keeps
And
track
we
of
are
it.
keeping track of this money.
The administration keeps track of it.
Well, then the administration needs to come in and report to us what's going on.
I'm sure that they have.
They have not. I've never heard a report saying we've got 300 outstanding work orders. 20 of those were for this, 10 were for that, something were for something else. I've never heard a report
What
of
would
that.
you like to see?
That's what I'd like to see. How do we know they're
More
going to
specifically.
continue to do what they're supposed to do? They've got a huge contract divided into the day, into the night shift does this, day shift does that, and we don't know that it's being done. Sinks are not being repaired. I mean, it's,
Building administrators.
what assurances do we have?
Are we seeing a lot of reports from building administrators, things not being done?
So, no, I mean, that's answers your question, no, we have buildings who, I talked to all the building administrators, I would say, you know, mostly cleaning issues, and half of them were happy, half of them weren't, but it boils down to the personnel that are in the building doing the cleaning. And so, when we get the right people in there, they're happy. There is a process set up, there's a work order process. Jason has access to all the work orders that are being reported. He reports those to us in cabinet meeting every week, how many work orders are outstanding. The cleaning process is that there is a check sheet, that the building administrators go through, and report that to Sam, who is the custodial manager. And so that's the process.
I reiterate, it's, most of it's personnel through the years, for 3 years anyway, and even prior to that, when we had it ourselves, it's personnel. So it's gonna, we have some buildings that right now are gonna be scoring really well on their school visit report, hey, it's really good. But that personnel might get moved someplace else and or resign and they're filled with somebody else, and now all of a sudden, so it cycles. So that's what I've seen over 3 years, and like I said, even before that. So at APCO, from my perspective, will respond and move people where needed and work on hiring people as needed to fill those spots when that stuff happens.
We have a lot of work orders that are old.
No, I typically look at one that gives me work in progress, and some of those are completed but have not been through the system and updated. And our secretary at the distribution center is the one that does that, and her time is split between food service and custodial. So they might be done and stacked over here, but not inputted in, it's taken off. Latest data that APCO did provide, because I did talk to him, I said, can you run some reports? I run some reports in it too, but I wanted them to run some reports for me. Because the one I was looking at was total work orders since we had School Dude, which is our maintenance work order system. And so it's skewing the data. But 1,499 work orders completed since July of last year. Or work orders were in place. Completed 1,395. So a completion rate of about 93%. And right now there's only 3 open tickets. So some of those work orders are work in process, such as continually change this filter. So that's going to be in there regularly, dump this trash can, some ground. So that's going to be, those are going to be calculated into that too. So some work orders are wish lists, I would say, from buildings. There it's a project type thing. Hey, well, I need this done. And or it's a work order, well, the ceiling tile needs replaced, and we know that there's a leak. Well, what is that leak? Is it from the roof or is it from HVAC system? And that might be, we're not just gonna go in and fix that right now. So that might be a withstanding work order that's gonna stay there, or we take that ceiling tile down, and it might be summer work before that we actually get that repaired. And so they might put it in again, hey, I need to get this. as far as sinks, with COVID money, we had a lot of updates to the new touchless faucets. And so I'm sure we need to go back through and update batteries and do all that. I have seen sinks that are not working and sinks that are broken, and some of that is vandalism. The thousands of dollars spent on this year, new paper towel dispensers, sink faucets, and all that kind of stuff. So periodically it's like, nope, we're not gonna fix that. That's not gonna be done for a little bit because we're not gonna just buy another one and put in there. And so we're gonna take care of high need spots, hopefully around our PAC gyms. We try to, but there's many times I've seen it, that paper towel dispenser is not in the gym bathroom where we have a lot of people come in. So I can shoulder some of that as a decision's made. Hey, we're not gonna replace that right now because it's just bleeding us dry. So
Because you're saying
we can send paper towel there. So go ahead.
You're saying it's from vandalism, that it's not there.
A lot of that is,
Yes.
some of it. Some of them, I mean, it's, this year we have started with the work orders and expenses that we've been doing. We have, Becky has, the secretary down there, kept a more accurate track, not 100% right, of what we're spending on electrical, plumbing. Those are two of the big ones, so that we can start to fine tune where do we need to budget, where do we need to come in and make some updates for potential sinks, toilets, faucets, that kind of stuff. Because when we're done with this bond issue, we're going to need to start our next long-term 5-10 year plan of where some major money goes. But a lot of that is operations and project-based stuff. That's my opinion. Are there some things not fixed? Yes. Are there some things broken? Yes. I'm not going to sit here. Are there areas that aren't as clean as they should be? Yes. But if known about it, I'd say most of the time they're addressed, from my opinion. Especially if it gets to me, to where I can say, hey, besides the work order, I can send a text and say, hey, can you make sure somebody's covered this?
And was there anything in the contract regarding the equipment? Are they gonna update the equipment? Are they gonna get newer equipment in versus using older equipment that may not be working good or cleaning as good and this costing more labor to the custodians? Was there anything in there about that?
John, you want to talk about the depreciation schedule?
Yes, more than.
I was gonna say, that was a question in the interview process too, for that, so.
So, thank you for having me today. Depreciation schedule, depending on the cost of the item, it's either on a 3 to 5 year depreciation schedule. If it's a piece of equipment that costs us under $1,000, we tend to expense that out right away. So that question was asked during the committee process. And what we did was, because we know the pandemic and supply chain issues right now, we've brought in about over $200,000 worth of equipment into our warehouses. Because we heard that there's going to be shortages this summer. So we have certain items that we, like a walk-behind battery-powered automatic scrubber. It's a very important piece of equipment that we use. We've been changing those out to orbital head scrubbers, which allow us to also do stripping with that. It's a new technology that, rather than the old manner of laying down stripper, letting it emulsify, scrubbing it, sucking it up with the wet dry vac, very labor intensive. It's also a safety hazard because somebody can slip and fall. There's more cleanup involved because if we don't properly neutralize the floor, there could be some additional residue that's there that when you go back and wax, you might say, we didn't rinse well enough. This new machine, it's all self-enclosed. So as we change the pad to a stripping pad, the orbital machine will go down through the classroom, through the hallway. It's a square pad head, like a rectangle shape, so we can get right up next to the baseboard. So we're cutting our edges very well. And as we're scrubbing, we're also rinsing right behind it with the machine. It has a squeegee on it. So this is the type of technology that we've been investing in. At any moment in time, a machine goes down, the machine's replaced. But ultimately, those were on the automatic scrubbers, those were on a 5 year depreciation schedule. So our goal is to have those go 5 years. If they don't, we're replacing them anyways, because we need that technology in the building to accomplish our work.
We have replaced vacuum. I know vacuums
Correct.
is probably one of the top things replaced on a regular basis in the last 3 years. Where we've had issues and shared our issues with you of brushes were not working near as well. And that's one of the things of those school visit reports are important, because if it's not vacuumed, it probably went over, but maybe it's an equipment issue. And so then APCO needs to look at that and go, okay, why do we have a personnel not vacuuming, or do we have a piece of equipment not working to the standard that it needs to work, and make those changes? So we have had updates. I know in 3 years we've had new equipment.
Absolutely. And one of the things we also covered on that is training. We're constantly having ongoing training. So the initial onboarding process, since we've started the contract, we've switched to an online video training program that all of our employees go through. When the pandemic started, we also added a disinfection specialist designation that they go through. They're all tested on this. All of our managers carry iPads and iPhones, so at any moment in time, they feel like that person needs a refresher. They're gonna go through the video, go through the test, understand the processes that they go through. But there's always gonna be on-the-job training and our management going behind and performing those inspections.
So going forward, how are you going to give your employees raises?
So right now, on the new proposal that has been submitted, our new minimum hire rate will now be $12.25 per hour. So we're very happy with that. Naturally, we always look to pay people more. It's a competitive workplace out there right now, as you can see now, hiring signs everywhere. But at the same time, we know that we have to respect the budget. We did have, in the previous school year, we did have some other school districts that were in-house started poaching our employees. They knew that they were trained, and they started coming to them with higher pay rates, and we were losing people. So it's very important in this bid cycle for all bidders to really take that in consideration of what it's going to take. And for us, our minimum was $12.25. Our pay range, we do have some what I would call legacy employees, ones that have been with us all 3 years, some that were prior in-house employees of the district. So that range can go all the way up to well over $14 an hour on custodians. So pay raises, definitely each year of the contract, there is an escalation, and that is a pay raise for all employees.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to request a roll call vote.
Any further discussions? Call roll?
Emily,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Doug Blair,
Yes.
Doug Alexander,
Yes.
Cameron,
Yes.
Jenny,
No.
Ben,
No.
Motion passes.
okay, thank you.
Item 9, adjournment. The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn from regular and reconvene closed session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Call the roll.
Nancy,
Yes.
Doug Blair,
Yes.
Doug Alexander,
Yes.
Cameron,
Yes.
Jenny,
Yes.
Ben,
Yes.
Emily.
Yes.
Are adjourned. 3 minutes, whatever. 10 minutes.
7 minutes.
We got it. 3 minutes. Yeah.
We don't know if we get some mission call.